Well, there's
right?
two ways to go about it that I see. You can, based on where you're at and your style, and you choose, both are going to be horrible. You can throw out the entire draft and write from scratch.
Hey everyone, Joe Bunting here. I'm doing more coachings just like this one. So if you want feedback on your book, if you want someone who's a professional writer, best-selling writer to look at your book, to look at your idea, to look at the structure, and just to talk to you about what's working in your story and what's not, I would love to work with you. You can find the link in the description to the coaching packages that we have. Check it out. It'll be fun. All right, talk soon.
Oh, and just so you know, I am on my phone because my 6-year-old decided to vigorously close my computer, causing the display to crack. So
I'm so sorry.
just one of those things. Maybe if you have a book plan, maybe we can go over that. And then, because I know you've done 100-day books, so you're familiar with that process.
Yeah, the problem is that it's not a problem. Actually, I have nothing to complain about because everything that I have been able to produce so far, I've been able to produce because of you and because of your program. And
That's awesome.
it really is. It might not have been
Yeah.
number 5 in the August webinar that you did for
Yeah.
the 100-day book program.
Yeah.
But when you said, take a novel that you like and use it as a template, I'd never even considered such a thing. And yeah, so it sent me like a fox with its tail on fire through the fields. And so by the time that the actual 100-day book program started, I had completed the first draft or most of it.
Wow. That's amazing. Give me your premise. Give me your premise really quick.
Okay. In this one, under the guise of writing musical program notes, a teenage girl's more diabolical plans come to light. Okay.
Okay, wait. Right now we're focusing a lot on the musical program notes. What's the diabolical plans?
Okay, so what happens is her history, her biography comes to light, and that is that she has systematically killed at least 7 people.
Nice.
Or six people. One of them was a pet, but that's the 7th. That was her practice run. And then
I love
that's
it.
the background. That's the background. And it's, you don't really
Definitely
realize
horror.
and you don't realize what's happened until she remarks on things.
Why did she kill?
We don't know. And I don't,
You don't even know.
It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. What's awful about it is that either it's the internal plot, and I think it should be the internal plot, not the subplot. What ends up happening is one of the murders was of a fellow student, and who was amazing, amazingly gifted, a violinist, loved, kind, a wonderful person. And so this reporter comes to do a story on this girl because it happened in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a junior at the time that she died. And the father had been paying for this girl's education. And anyway, so this investigative reporter is actually, she's misunderstood. She's very pompous and arrogant, and things that don't fit in her narrative, she just discounts or rewrites. It turns out this is actually a cop.
Okay, got it.
It's a reporting investigator. It's the opposite. She's reworked it. So she thinks that she is ingratiating herself to this newspaper person, but it's not. It's a cop. She's collaborating with her in this story of her former roommate, this girl she's killed. But I think what's ending up really going to happen, how that girl was killed was in a bathtub, electrical shock. And you see her preparing to do it once again. Bathtub, messing with the electrical. But what's going to end up happening is she's actually going to turn that other person into a killer, but by sacrificing herself. She's going to kill herself, make herself as small as possible, reduce her
Love it.
life, and then force the other person into this moral
The cop.
trauma of having killed a person.
So great.
Along the way, she's taking the reader, and what she's intending to do is to either make an accomplice of the reader, and if she can't do that, she's going to paralyze the reader into a place of not being able to make a moral decision.
Okay, so let me pause you for a second.
Yeah, please.
So
Do you want to read just the preface?
yeah, send me over the preface, but I have some thoughts before we get into it.
Sure.
I would say that this is thriller,
Okay.
because thriller is driven by crime, okay?
Yes.
But it has horror elements. And
Okay.
one thing that you said, I think is important to be clear
Okay.
about it. You said it doesn't matter what her goal is, what her motive is, why she's killing people. I think that's really important.
Well, it
No.
is. I know what you're saying. So this is what this girl is fascinated by, is delivery, reduction, catching people unaware, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so she's driven by the performance of it, and she's
Yes.
performing for this. So here's how I would rewrite this premise. Over the course of a series of interviews, seemingly about her musical program or her musical performance, maybe say that.
Well, it's actually about this other girl.
Yeah, but she's always going to be trying to make it about herself.
About
right?
herself. Yes. Okay. Yes.
So whenever you're writing a premise, you can either focus on the inciting incident or the climax. And here we have an opportunity, of course, focus on the climax. I'm trying to think of a version that will look at the inciting incident. We could say, if we were to do that, we could say something like the truth behind a series of grisly murders takes shape or something.
Okay. Over the course of a series of interviews, seemingly about her musical theories.
I think you got to fit the detective in and do it within the context of her delusion.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Okay.
The reason why we focus on this so much, Kara, is this is gonna, and even at this point, like for your first draft, your premise is for you, and it's for you to figure out what your story is really about, right? As you move toward publishing, your premise becomes really focused on the pitching process, okay? Because this will become part of your query letter. And it will actually be the most important part of your query letter. Okay. I was just talking to someone who helps authors work on their query letters and critique them. And she has like a 40% success rate in terms of her clients getting signed by literary agents, which for a query coach is ridiculous. Like it's so high, And one of the things she said is that all of her best pitches have 4 components, and it's pretty much exactly what we teach. There's a character, there's a goal, what do they want? There's a situation, ideally some kind of impossible situation or really difficult situation, and some kind of special sauce. Okay. And the special sauce word is actually a publishing phrase, which is funny because it's such a cliche, but some kind of special thing that makes it interesting in the marketplace. And, I think yours has the elements of that. We just got to massage it into place. It reminds me of, did you ever read The Dinner by Herman Koch?
No.
You would love it. You need to go read it. It's
Okay.
really well written and
Uh-huh.
great for what we're talking about because
Koch.
Koch, I think he's Dutch, and
Okay.
it's a good example of unreliable narrator
Okay.
and a monstrous character who has the control of our attention.
Yeah.
And Gone Girl is, of course, another example.
Yeah, I've never read it. I unfortunately watched the movie, and yeah, I
Yeah,
shouldn't
I
have
don't
done
think
that.
you need to read it. I think Herman Koch's book would be better
Yeah.
for you, but it's good from the perspective of a delusional character
Hmm.
who is a monster who we don't realize is a monster till later. So their monstrosity slowly gets revealed through the story, through this one event, through this dinner where they're just having a conversation, and it's really brilliantly done. And I don't know, it might have some ideas for you as far as how
Okay.
to structure it from a time perspective too. Yeah, I would just focus on the murders have to be in there.
Right.
The detective character has to be in there somehow.
All the
And
time.
now, one thing I think is important though is that the crime, we all know it happened from chapter 1. Okay. And
Oh,
we
interesting.
all know something happened. We don't know completely what it was, but there was a problem and they're going to go talk about it, and I think that's super important for thriller and just in general, that there has to be some kind of
There is, yeah.
inkling, even when it's like this, that
Hmm.
bad shit has gone down.
Oh, no, absolutely. And that's in the foreword that something is off.
What do you mean? Tell me more about that. That's the preface you said?
Oh, yeah, in the
Okay.
yeah.
Why don't we read that? You have it?
Yeah, do you want me to just put it on the screen?
Can you send it to, and what I'll do is I'll read through it and I'll take notes while I'm reading through it. Did you know that this poem was used in Twilight?
Oh, no. Yeah, and I don't, it's not, I actually have something else I'd like to use instead of it anyway.
I think this is fine. I think what you're developing here is her voice, which is thick, full of lingo and references, and this is not easy reading, and
No.
that's okay. But I think unless you get to, but then what I mean, this is great. It's hilarious and perfect. It's a break in her voice.
I'm realizing something. I'm realizing as we're going through this process. Okay, so in Lolita, in Debt to Pleasure, the background characters are gray. They're very normal. They're very normal, two-dimensional, uninteresting. I felt an obligation to provide context for her horrible behavior. And in doing so, overcomplicated the characters in the background. I need to redo all that. The characters need to be bland. They don't need to deserve death. They just need to be, I used to act, and I remember I was doing the Bourgeois Gentleman at Ravinia in Chicago for their little festival, and the director had us doing stuff, and I was working with my scene partner, and the director said to us, listen, he said, Kara, I need you to, Kara, oh, and I said, oh, you just need me to be the daughter. And he goes, yes, thank you. Can you just be the daughter? And I said, yes, that's fine. I can just be the daughter. And it relieved me of all kinds of work.
Yeah.
And all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And it made it so much easier. He just needed a two-dimensional, it's a comedy, for God's sake. Let's just have a daughter. Okay. So I realized I just need my background people to just be boring. So I need to evaluate all of this because it's already thick enough with the voice. It doesn't need to be complicated with the plot or the background.
Yeah, I think I disagree. I think
Okay.
everyone has their own arc, but I think you can focus too much on the things that don't matter to the story. That's something that many writers do, you know?
So say that again.
I do think every character has their own arc. Whether
Yes.
you need to show that
Yes.
is the question or not.
I don't, yeah, I'm getting that. I don't
Yeah.
need to, I just need to make it easier, more accessible. So if which I do want to rely on just this voice, I do want to rely on this because that's really the fun of it is the breaks and the deceptions and her overinflated sense of self,
Yeah.
which is what ends up being the problem.
I think what's good is one thing you're focusing on is her obsession. She is obsessed. She's an obsessive person.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that's really fun. And she has all these great little lingo things. I think it could be sharpened and simplified. This almost feels like a college textbook.
Mhm.
And that's okay for
Uh-huh.
phases, but you'll lose people if you do it too long. And it's just
Exactly.
500 words, so it's no big deal. But I would, from the beginning, one thing I just want you to think more about is where we are in, okay, just setting the scene and from the beginning being really clear about where we are, okay, physically. Because right now we're in intellectual land in these
Yes.
first couple of spots, especially even
Yes.
getting into the first chapter.
No,
Like we're
yes,
still in
absolutely.
intellectual land.
Yeah.
And I need you to cement us into the real world. Chapter 1 should begin. It's fine that the program notes begin in this intellectual land, but
Yes.
I still
no,
think it needs to be a little bit clearer. And I would even
Yeah.
go and look at
yes.
20 different program notes and see some conventions that they use just to make it feel. There's definitely elements of it that are there. What is the purpose of the program notes? And then riffing on these Toussaint and other people.
Yeah.
So I'm into that. But I think your first couple lines could just be clear about what we're doing,
Yeah.
And the same with chapter 1. The first paragraph or 2, maybe 3, maybe 5, we need to know where we are. Okay. The way I teach it's just exposition. Like I teach
Yes.
the first scene from How to Train Your Dragon a lot because it's just so good and simple. Have you ever seen that
Okay.
film?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So the first 30 seconds, this is Burke,
Yeah.
and he's just being super sarcastic about why it's a horrible place to live. And then, oh, by the way, there are dragons here,
Right. Right.
And I think channel that first 30 seconds in your first paragraph or 3 or 5,
Right.
I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Stories are shown and we have a lot of telling already, and that's
Right.
fine, but you have to think about telling and the character's voice is interesting, so that's great.
Right.
But you have to get into showing. And so like I see we get into that. Another thing to just be cautious about is jumping around through different memories,
Yes.
rabbit trailing. You want to
Yeah.
give people a full scene.
Right.
So
Okay.
always, I like to when I'm editing, I like to really track what I'm doing, because a lot of times we just rabbit trail, and we start in one scene that reminds us of another story or
Right.
the character of another story, and then another story that's 30 years ago. And then all of a sudden, 3 layers deep, we're like
Yes.
in Inception, and
Yes,
we're
yes,
going
yes.
to the dark place, you know?
Yep.
So tell a full
Yes.
story event, a scene,
Okay.
complete with a dilemma. That's the most important thing. Your job right now is to find dilemmas.
I've never
I-
tried this before, so I of course had to choose the hardest possible thing to do.
Wouldn't it be fun otherwise?
Exactly. All right.
Yeah, no, I think you're on the right track. I would read The Dinner and read it from the perspective of a thriller,
Yes. Okay.
looking for crime. Okay. You're
Okay.
looking for crime, and maybe even get the book or get it on Amazon, on
Right,
Kindle
right.
or whatever, and highlight all of the references to
Okay.
crime.
Okay, I'll do that.
And then when you get to the end, go back and read the first chapter again and highlight the references in a different color, you know, because there will be a different set of some that pop out of you.
Okay, so as I read it, highlight references to crime, then reread.
Not the
First
whole
chapter?
thing. Yeah, just until you get the perspective. You don't have to reread the whole thing, but
And
just read a chapter or however many more you want.
highlight the
And
new in different color.
yeah, highlight
Okay, I got
references
it.
to crime that you now see
Yeah,
after reading.
sure. Yeah, the outline I hadn't finished because I haven't known what I'm doing. This is the first time I've ever tried to write anything with an outline.
Yeah.
And so I just, I didn't pick an easy thing to do. I picked like the probably hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay. You learn more.
Well, there's
right?
2 ways to go about it that I see. You can, based on where you're at and your style, and you choose which sounds less horrible. Both are going to be horrible. You can throw out the entire draft and write from scratch with it like on the side. Okay.
Yeah.
You
that's what I'm doing.
hand wrote the first draft, right?
Yes.
So just do the same thing, print it out, and in a new screen, either handwrite or type up draft 2. So that's basically like starting a new draft. You're rewriting from scratch. Okay? Yeah. That's option number 1. Option number 2 is you do a detailed outline. Detailed can be relative, but you know, the way to think about this is that an average novel has 50 to 70 scenes, 50 to 70 story events.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
And write out those 50 to 70 story events. You can get super detailed, right structure about it. You could put the dilemma for each one. I wouldn't stress a ton about getting all 6 elements in there,
Oh, okay.
but you could put the dilemma for each one and maybe the inciting incident for each one.
Okay. Actually, that's the one I think I was trying to do, is to do an outline. I am scrapping that first draft because it
Yeah.
doesn't meet the needs of what novel requires. So, okay, but I like this on inciting incident.
Focus on just creating a list, and you can have like cue cards, or you can have just a spreadsheet, or you can have a list, whatever you need, so that you can see the overarching structure of your book as it stands right now. Okay.
Yes.
And then you're probably going to need to move things around.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then, but identifying the story event is really important. Okay. Because it's almost like the premise for each scene. And as you're going back and rewriting, you want to know, why is this scene important? Is it important? What's
Right.
the inciting incident? How does the action kick off? How does
Right.
the dilemma happen? You know, you need to make sure you have each of those three things in your mind as you rewrite the next scene. It's a lot of work. It's horrible, but
It's just
I think-
complicated by the structure of what I'm trying to do.
exactly.
And I'm wondering if maybe I just shouldn't be doing this at all.
No,
If I,
you should
if I should.
stop that.
Should-
Yeah, of course.
I don't know, this particular story, not writing, just this particular story because of the complications inherent. Or if I
Well,
should
if
write
you're
something a
gonna
little more
quit,
straightforward.
I think now would be an okay time to do it. You
Yeah.
succeeded in writing a draft,
Right,
and that's a huge accomplishment. And you should
Right,
be
right, right,
really
right.
proud of yourself.
I am. I've learned so much. Oh my God.
If you're not excited about it, if you feel
Oh, I
like,
am.
okay, then stop. Then whatever.
Okay. All right.
You know, like I think if you told me the story, if you told me this and it didn't have enough story, then I would be like, okay, maybe. But this does have enough story. It
Okay.
doesn't have enough plot. The characters are interesting. The voice is interesting.
Okay.
And you just need to do the hard work of getting it to the next place, you know,
Yeah.
and it's not even the final place. It's just,
The next
and one thing
place.
I'll just caution you, like second drafts, they're just as bad as first drafts. Like they're
Oh,
horrible.
I get it. I get it. I
So don't be
totally get it.
perfectionistic about this next draft either.
Thanks, Joe, for your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy.
No, it's all good. This is super fun. I'm excited to see how it develops and how we see the crazy girl kill people. It's going to be fun.
All right. All right. I have a lot to do before I actually start writing that. So
Yeah, you do. Yeah, the outline is key. I really think
yeah,
just
it is.
just getting a sense of what's happening in your story will really, it's going to be so annoying to go through it and painful, but I think it's really key. So
Yeah,
do it.
it is. Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
Take care.
All right, Kara, good luck.